Hi, my name is Gretchen Kaiser, and my researched health topic is food deserts. Food deserts are basically areas or regions where healthy, nutrient-rich, rich, fresh food is not easily accessible. The USDA has the most commonly used and recognized definition, which says that they are urban neighborhoods and rural towns without ready access to fresh, healthy, and affordable food. With our book, Nutrition Concepts and Controversies, having a very similar definition. Food deserts can and do lead to health issues of the people living in the food insecure regions, some of these being chronic diseases, obesity, malnourishment, just to name a few. A journal on food deserts and their healthy effects, mainly obesity, stated that a dramatic rise in rates of obesity beginning in the late 1980s created deep concern about an obesity epidemic. So, while food deserts may be a growing concern and a topic that is more talked about now than before, and access to go rich food a while. The term food desert was first coined in Scotland as early as the 1990s, but as seen in the Journal on Obesity, they were even a problem before then. This image, taken off the USDA website, is showing a map of the United States and the percentages of people and groups of people with no car and no supermarket within a mile of them. As seen on the key, the darker the area, the larger percentage of people without access to healthy food, as well as a car. A large portion of the darker parts on the map, and the country being in the south. When looking for specific numbers about food deserts, I discovered that food deserts are defined by census tracts. That less than 1 in 5 people shop for groceries in the same census tract where they live. Also, that 6,529 out of 74,134 census tracts meet the USDA definition for food deserts, which comes to around 9%. In 2012, 14.5% of households in the United States experienced food insecurity, and 13% of Canadian households did. And lastly, but honestly most scary for me to think about, was that 23.5 million people live in low-income areas that are a mile or more from a supermarket. Several factors contribute to food deserts, and many issues, sides, and views come into play. The first of those being the political side of it. Like all things affecting the world, politics has come into this in some way. Part of the reason it does is due to socioeconomic disparities and class status. Socioeconomics is involved because the prevalence of food insecurity is highest in low-income families. Politicians and lawmakers may and should be concerned about funding in these areas, where food insecurity is most prevalent. It is their decision for things like funding. Funding could go to any number of things. In the case of lessening food deserts, it could go to better food sources, healthcare that could help the effects of the poor food intake, or even nutrition education. As is common in the media today, race comes into play, in the form of comparing whites to blacks and how both groups are affected. A statistic stated that 8% of African Americans live in a census tract with a supermarket, compared to 31% of whites. So more focus could be put on urban poverty and health and nutritional education to lessen these percentages. Map, like the first one I brought up, shows the percentages of food insecurities in the United States. Lawmakers may want to look at maps such as this one in order to know best how the states and countries' funding may help pull some areas out of the food desert classifications and lessen the larger percentages in the southern states. Another factor is that of the cultural side. Some reasons behind this are religion, race, and familiarity. Religion and race being the more obvious of the two. They're part of this because in some religions and cultures, certain foods are allowed while others are not. As we know in the United States, meats like chicken, beef, and pork are extremely common, but for a different religion, these may be entirely frowned upon. Some meats in other cultures, such as snakes, monkeys, dogs, mice, etc., may be completely insane for us to think about. So the same goes for other religions and cultures, where in the United States we may think this is crazy. This is very common for them. Familiarity simply looks at what people are used to. So if someone grew up only eating McDonald's or otherwise unhealthy foods, getting them to change their diet may be out of the question. In looking at a study, there was one woman who drank whole milk her whole childhood. When she got into adulthood, even knowing that this was bad, she still could not stop herself from drinking it because this is what she was used to. Looking at the education of this was both controversial and interesting. I compared two meals, one unhealthy and one on the healthier side. First was the meal of a 10-piece McDonald's Chicken McNuggets meal with medium fries and a medium Coke. This came to 1,000 calories and $8.44. The second was 4 ounces of homemade grilled chicken breast, 1 cup of steamed broccoli, and 1 cup of quinoa. All fairly healthy options. This came to 839 calories and $8.43. While it's just a penny, it is a cent cheaper than the McDonald's option. This example disputes what people say about fast food being cheaper than healthier food, but the healthier food and meal requires knowing how to cook, what to shop for, etc. So, on the political side of this, maybe more funding needs to go into educating those who don't know about better options for their diets. So, what can we do? Community gardens, more supermarkets, and farm markets can be set up. Educational programs about better diets, healthier food, better environments, and anti-obesity efforts can be funded. But many are not convinced that these will even help. Like this image shows, with a McDonald's, Burger King, Taco Bell, Pizza Hut, or any other easily accessible, unhealthy food options on every other corner, they're both quick, cheap, and easy to feed families and individuals. Education comes up again as an argument when stating that overcoming cultural resistance to dietary change is presumably a matter of better education. Some more arguments being that if more options are made available, will people use them? So even if we were to put supermarkets, farm markets, and better education, would people take advantage of these, or would they stick to the options that they know? An article stated, although there are some exceptions, most studies that we have reviewed suggest that the assumption is indeed wrong. Specifically, the diets of food desert citizens do not tend to improve very much or at all when better food and different food outlets are made available. Another question is, do food deserts actually exist? Many people question this because while most point out the fact that McDonald's and other fast food restaurants are unhealthy, the options, which some people in the areas that these quote-unquote food deserts are, people may go for these options. It cannot also be said that people's diets and health disparities are due to living in a food desert. So that comes back to, if more options are made available, will people use them? So someone may have a grocery store across the street from them, but their diet may still suggest otherwise if they are to go for the unhealthier options. This meaning that they may be due to culture, time, willingness to change their lifestyle, being that fast food options are technically easier. So following this, some questions to look at are, what do you think can be done in order to address this problem, or at least lessen the impact it has on many communities? And is it possible that even with implemented programs or more options, the people in these communities and regions won't even use them? Like I last stated,